Yes, yes, sir. Warm greetings and good evening to all the distinguished participants who are here today. It is indeed an happy occasion for we have Commodore Vasan with us back again, who was for a brief time away due to slight indisposition. On this occasion, we also gratefully acknowledge the presence of Air Marshal Vardhaman, Shri Pratap Heblika, Shri Krishnan Verma, and all the distinguished participants who are here with us today. At the outset, before we begin, we would also like to sincerely thank Lieutenant General P.R. Shankar, as Commodore Vasan also got out. He always starts his day with an article and ends his day with an article, who graciously accepted on a very short notice to make this presentation on evolving scenario in Myanmar and overview. Thank you very much, sir. And also thank Colonel Hariharan sir for graciously accepting to moderate the session on a very short notice. On this note, I would like to hand it over to Commodore R.S. Vasan, Director C3S, for opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Bala. General Shankar, Colonel Hariharan, Marshal Varthaman, and Professor Sudnarayan, Mr. Krishnan Verma, Mr. Pratap Heblika, and many other distinguished participants. We are very happy that we are holding this conversation today. Before we started the meeting, there was some informal discussions here about Myanmar, and not at all encouraging in terms of signs that we see there across the border. UN is talking about something like 250,000 people who have been affected badly and are hungry. And there are camps being set up there. And as Colonel Hariharan brought out, the army is in full charge. And some of the assessments indicate that they are not going to relent. Sanctions or no sanctions. They're already used to this issue of sanctions being imposed on them and China coming to their aid the last time round. So I'm sure they'll refine this format and move on. So, we today are very happy that General Shankar is here. He's been writing regularly about China issues, Myanmar, our neighborhood, and many other issues. I don't think there's any issue that is not touched, particularly in the last year and a half. And we also have Colonel Harian, who has first-hand knowledge of Myanmar. He's operated out there, and he's had close relations with many of the officers there. And I must also acknowledge the presence of Dr. Bamde from Nepal, who has made it a point to be here in all our interactions. So that also gives us some additional inputs from Nepal. Also, we are discussing about the vaccine drive in Nepal, where they are now getting Sputnik from Russia. And they are also very wary about getting the Chinese vaccines, let me assure you. They want vaccines from India. So this is what Dr. Bamde told us just now, before we all joined. Okay, so I would like to just say that it's unfortunate, of course, that we could not have General Hasnain today. He was supposed to come and talk to us on information warfare, but we will have that soon. The bad news is that his wife and daughter were both affected by COVID, but I'm sure they'll come out of this with the kind of Fauji mentality which is there. I just came out of COVID. So there are some who will succeed and there are who will not, but that's the life that we have to live with as far as we are concerned. So within the Chennai Center for China Studies, I just wanted to bring some information to your note. As in the past, this is the 13th year of our commissioning. The founding day was celebrated on 4th of April. And close on the heels of that, we also had an international seminar right here in Chennai, along with the contemporary studies, China studies in Delhi, headed by General Narasimhan, supported by India. That was another excellent event which was very well conceived and conducted, and we had speakers of international repute across time zones discussing with us on the Chinese society. It's a fact that is not discussed much. So there is so much that is happening within the Chinese society, and it's not directly related to the topic that we have, but definitely what China is going to do in Myanmar will be of great interest to us. So, without much ado, let me now hand you back to Bala for introducing the speaker, and also hand over to Colonel Hariharan for conducting the proceedings. I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions here, but as in the past, I would recommend that you put those questions in the chat box so they can be channelized at the end of it. And thank you all for being here and for providing your inputs to an important topic such as Myanmar. I know there'll be plenty of inputs, particularly from Pratap Heblikarji, Mr. Krishnan Verma, and many others who are perhaps served in those areas. So we look forward to an excellent interactive session today after General Shankar's talk. Over to you, Bala.
Thank you very much, sir. Before I hand it over to Colonel Hariharan sir to quickly, briefly introduce a topic, I would like to read out the bio of Lieutenant General P.R. Shankar sir. He retired as a Director General of Artillery, Indian Army. He has vast operational experience and has held many important command, staff, and instructional appointments in the Army. An alumnus of the prestigious Defence Services Staff College, Wellington, Army War College, Mhow, Naval Postgraduate School, Monterrey, and National Defence College, Delhi. He gave great impetus to the modernization of artillery through indigenization. He has a deep understanding and experience of successful defense planning and acquisition spanning over a decade. The major 155 gun projects like the Dhanush, M777 Ultra Light ULH, and K9 Vajra rocket and missile projects related to Pinaka, BrahMos, and Grad BM21 surveillance projects like Swati WLR and some ammunition projects came to the fructification due to his efforts. With this, I would like to now hand it over to Colonel Hariharan sir to briefly introduce a topic, and then we would like to hand it over to Lieutenant General P.R. Shankar sir for his presentation. Over to you, Colonel Hariharan sir.
Thank you, Bala. Firstly, I am delighted to be here. It's a privilege to listen to General Shankar. I actually, I am a old gunner, and every day I wait for his gunner shot, which cheers me up. One thing is he gingers up the scenario when there is so much dismal atmosphere, thanks to our, mostly due to, not due to COVID, but due to our columnists who send a negative vibe. So thank you, General, for keeping us informed and giving a perspective. So I am looking forward to his perspective of what is happening in Myanmar. I have known Myanmar from 1967 onwards, when I was in Borko headquarters. At that time, there was intense American activity, and the Chinese were taking baby steps to enter Burma, and Americans were trying to influence us to arm Kachin rebels, because the Americans, I don't know whether you know, in the Burmese history, but nearly a brigade minus of the Kuomintang army got into Burma, and CIA was feeding it to continue the fight against communists. So Burma did not recognize. We should recognize China initially, till a settlement came with the Red China, as they used to call it, and this Kuomintang battalions were taken out. What happened was the tribal areas, that is the non-Burma population, was armed with the leftover weapons by the CIA was very much involved, and now we have, and actually the US also was involved in the Karen rebellion, and they had continued till George W. Bush Jr. was president, as recently as that, because his wife was she headed the support echelon of Karen National Union, which used to give stocks and supplies. So it is a very complex situation, and ideally, three countries, they can come together: India, China, Thailand, and Japan. I should say Japan, because it's a very influential country in the region. And at a pinch, South Korea. They can evolve a peace plan. But we are in real world, and I don't think it is going to happen so soon, because it is a very complex situation has emerged now. I won't repeat what has happened in Myanmar. There is a sort of a unity government has been formed by the newly elected parliament members, and they are trying to draw in there are 14 rebel armies which have signed a ceasefire, and there are 4 have not accepted. They are the major ones. So already the army has signed the agreement with the biggest of them, Arakan army. The army is called Tatmadaw. Tatmadaw has signed the informal agreement. So they are trying to divide. I will leave it to General Shankar to take over because I would like to understand his perspective, which I value, uh, before we proceed further. Over to General Shankar.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for the confidence you have reposed in me. Thanks a lot, Bala, for the kind words you've spoken. And thanks a lot, Sir Commodore Vasan, for what you have said. At the outset, a very good evening to all of you. Those of you taken the trouble of listening about Myanmar from me. I am not a great expert on Myanmar. Let me be very clear at the outset. But I've done some analysis, and this is what I'm going to present to you. I have not been to Myanmar, but I've seen Myanmar from a very close distance because I commanded a brigade in that area, right? And we've gone through a lot of war games in Tudiv, on how, or not Tudiv exactly, RALP, as to how things can pan out in an Indo-Sino-Indian scenario with Myanmar in the fray. How it comes, I'll explain to you. It is with that background, I developed a presentation. I didn't write anything. For some reason, I didn't write an article on Myanmar. I developed a presentation. And I'll put it across to you. I don't have too many thoughts to give you, but I'll give you some fundamental facts because Myanmar is a country about which many of us know something, but very little. How it influences things, we should be clear. Some of us know it, I have no doubt about it, but many of us don't. We also have to look at Myanmar from a different angle. If you look to the west, Pakistan is in trouble. Pakistan to Afghanistan, everything is going down. If you look to the east, this side, Myanmar is also in a problem. We have our issues with Nepal, we have our issues with Bangladesh, we have our issues with Sri Lanka also. But strictly speaking, India's wings are on fire. And we have to recognize it. And that is why I took up this thing of studying Myanmar, because this has got a great impact on whatever is going to happen in Pakistan and ultimately with China. So yesterday when Bala said, look, what are you going to talk? I said, I'll talk about Myanmar. He said, sir, speak 2 sentences at least about China. I said, no, there's more than 2 sentences about China and Myanmar. And that's our business. And I think, C3S must spend as much time on Myanmar, if nothing else. With this, I'll start my presentation, please. Yeah. Right. Yeah, can you see this presentation?
Yes, sir. You just have to make it full screen, sir.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, you can see this now?
Perfect, sir.
Perfect, right. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about Myanmar. Now, before I talk, I thought I'll share with you something which I read. The problem with Myanmar is that it is ruled by a queen and a king, both whose photograph are there shaking hands with each other, but they're not married to each other. The sad thing is that even before they get married to each other, they are on the verge of a divorce. Right. Now, let's look at Myanmar geopolitically. Out of Myanmar, from a little far away. It is central and pivotal to any aspect of the Indo-Pacific strategy. That's how important it is. Either the Indo or the Pacific, Myanmar sits at the middle. It is the connect between the Indo and the Pacific. If things go wrong in Myanmar for the Quad or India or US, China will trample in. Let's not make any mistakes. If you don't understand this, we will go wrong. So the centrality of Myanmar in the Indo-Pacific is the first issue I have to drive home. Right, let's look at Myanmar itself. Now, Myanmar has a border with Bangladesh in this area that is abutting the Chittagong Hills tracts, the Rohingya Rakhine state, about 256 kilometers. With India, it has borders with Mizoram, Manipur, Nagaland, and Arunachal. It's a long border and it's a torturous border of 1300 kilometers. It has got a long border with China in the north with the Yunnan province, that's around 2000 kilometers. Right. And a small border with Laos, about 224 kilometers, and a very long border with Thailand, 2000 odd kilometers. And this is the Kra Isthmus, across which China is planning to put across a canal or a land route, a land bridge as they call it, with a port either side. Okay. And it has got 2000 kilometers of coastline. This is China. Look at the strategic importance. If you go down 5 to 600 kilometers, you hit the Bay of Bengal. If China enters the Bay of Bengal through this route, it actually actualizes its two ocean strategy, which Robert Kaplan had put across some time back. So that's how important Myanmar is in the entire scheme of things. Right. Area wise, it is about 600. This is where it is, east west 936 kilometers, north south 2000 kilometers or 2051 kilometers. Now, if you look at it geographically, the hills come north south direction, low hills. They are the residual hills of the Himalayas as they turn around and flow from north to south. It has got a whole lot of rivers: Chindwin, Irrawaddy, Sitang, and Salween. Around these rivers are, the valleys are all agricultural land, maximum population in the valleys. The hills are jungles, low hills, jungles, humid jungles. And the situation here is something akin to Manipur. If you go to Manipur, the Manipur Valley, right, is flat along the Loktak Lake. And the hills are all jungles. The hills are dominated by tribes. The valley is by the Manipuri Meiteis. And there's a problem between the two of them. Something similar here also. Only thing, it's not an enclosed valley like Manipur, but it's something like that. Right? The hills are all tribals. The valley dwellers are all agriculturists. There's a difference between the tribal thinking and this thing. We'll touch upon it a little later. Now, when you look at the ethnic composition, this was as of 2000, not much would change. But look at the religions. Buddhism is the main dominant religion. It is made up of 135 national races. Now, this is state-wise distribution of, a political map of Myanmar. Now, this is the demographic map of Myanmar. You'll see all the ethnic groups and tribals are all along. This is the Rakhine state, and this is where all the Rohingyas are. And traditionally, you'll find the Muslims never occupy the hills and the high features. They are always coastal or on plains. And the Bamars, the major group, or the Burmans, the Bamar are the original of Burmans, are in the valleys. Right. Okay. Now, some fundamental facts which we have to understand, because again people think that Burma has got nothing, but Burma has got a lot of things. It's got a GDP of 55 billion, a per capita of 876, which is rather poor, without doubt. But if you look at their sectorial thing between services, agriculture, and industry, you will see that naturally agriculture is more, services is great, industry is about 20%, with a tremendous potential to go up. Right? If they can do some national reconciliation, Burma could be the powerhouse of economy in this part of the country and part of the world. Why will come later? They've got a population of about 61 million, right? About half of Bangladesh, a little less than half of Bangladesh, with about 135 ethnic groups, which you have said, and a huge population, young population, low. The bulge, youth bulge is huge there. When you look at the resources, this is what is important. This has got huge gas reserves, oil reserves, right? Water is in plenty out there. This is one of the countries which is endowed with water. Okay, and huge hydropower potential. While there is potential in Myanmar, there is trouble, because where this potential is, got no industry, and where this potential is, cannot use it. So there is a conflict in this. A huge forest cover, 50% land area, Burma teak. This is all Burma teak comes from there only. And of course, 90% of the world's rubies, and like what Colonel Hariharan was mentioning, a lot of drugs. The Myanmar, Thailand, this belt is all called the Golden Triangle. Of course, the southern China, Laos, Cambodia, there's the Golden Triangle from where huge trafficking of illegal drugs, and with drugs, arms also are on the cards. So, of course, rubies also, there's a whole lot of illegal smuggling. And it's a resource-rich state, but eternally poor. That's the pity of Myanmar. When you look at the social indicators, 25% in below, absolute poverty, adult literacy and all are high. This is something again similar to what happens in the Northeast. There's a lot of similarity if you look at Northeast and this place, right? Infant mortality of 41 per 1,000, no doctors, lot of access to safe water, much more than what we have in India. That's again because water resources are huge, but right. Now, when you look at trade, import export is approximately the same. Your top three exports are gas, wood, and legumes. Imports, vehicles, and basically developed products. And top trading partners are China, Thailand, and Japan. Japan is important. Again, like what Colonel Hariharan was saying before we started, Japan has got a say in Myanmar. Okay, now we'll look at the timeline because it's had a troubling past and the future also looks troubling with no easy solutions. When you go back in history, it was in the 19th century that the British captured Mandalay and Burma became a province. And around 1937, Burma was separated by the Britishers and made into a separate colony. 1942, Japanese invaded Burma. 1945, Burma was liberated from Japanese with the help of Aung San. Aung San was the father of Aung San Suu Kyi. Right, he was soon after Burma gained independence. He was also assassinated, and that's how this lady gets prominence. And then Burma became independent in 1948, approximately the same time as us, a year later, with U Nu as the prime minister. Now, he continued till about 1962 nebulously when he was ousted in a military coup by General Neven. Now, Burma from that time onwards has gone through a lot of cycles of economic depravity and natural disasters. They had a currency devaluation and it had an economic problem. Then they had the issue when the SLORC came into being, that the State Law and Order Restoration Council, basically a military junta. There was almost a civil war situation and huge problems. And then there was martial law declared. Burma, 1989, it was renamed as Myanmar. And that was when the cycle of putting Aung San Suu Kyi under house arrest started, in and out, extensions and what have you. Without going into this, I'm just touching the outer line so that you understand that this country has had a troubled past from the beginning, never a settled country. Right? It was in 1990 that the first elections were held in some form in the recent past. It's the modern Burma. And Aung San Suu Kyi's NLD won. But then it was ignored by the military and she was put back into prison. And, she won in 1991 for standing up against the military at that point of time, as it was perceived, right, and was awarded the Nobel Prize. When, Tan Shwe became the SLORC chairman in 1992, and he had some talk with Aung San Suu Kyi, released after some time, but then again, she was put back. 1997, Burma was admitted into the ASEAN. Now, this is important. We have good relations with ASEAN, but it is significant to note that Burma is the only ASEAN country with which India has a border. So, if you want connectivity with ASEAN to go and ASEAN things to happen, we need to hold Burma together. And that's how it is. And it was in 2005, the capital moved from Rangoon to Naypyidaw, where it is today. Right. Now, again, in 2007, Aung San Suu Kyi's house arrest was extended because there were some problems and all that. I'll not get into it. 2008, Burma went through a bad time. It was hit by Cyclone Nargis. Death toll over those 3 days of Cyclone Nargis was estimated to be as high as 1,34,000. Put it in perspective. Today, we are going through COVID for the past 1 year. India's death due to COVID is around 2 lakhs. In 3 days, this country had 1,34,000 deaths. Huge, huge. And this is probably a very conservative estimate. So, huge problems it has had. And then, of course, she was convicted fine. Now, the change in Myanmar started about a decade back, 2011-12. That's why I'm showing these in micro thing. Now, Thein Sein, again a general, he was sworn in as the president in March 2011. In August, he started reconciliation with Aung San Suu Kyi. Now, all this while, these people were in touch with China, and China was making this Mitsone hydroelectric dam. And Thein Sein came and suspended it. Where Mitsone Dam is and why it was suspended, I'll give a sense of it a little later. I'll come back to it. Okay. This was in September. In October, he freed a few political prisoners. Then elections started. And then by December, Hillary Clinton went to Myanmar. She met Aung San Suu Kyi, held talks with Thein Sein, and Myanmar started opening up. Our Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, he paid the first official visit by a Prime Minister since 1987 in May 2012, right? And then, of course, Barack Obama said, we'll help you out. So Myanmar started normalizing to what it was till last year, but in over a decade back, right? Now it went through almost nebulously for the past 1 decade. 2015, NLD won enough seats and it formed a government. That government was again a very funny government. She was not the president or the prime minister. She was some state councillor or something like that. But then it went on. 2017, the Rohingya Muslim crisis started. Now, this was funny. The whole story was that, okay, they had a problem with the Rohingyas. That's okay. That whether it's correct or not, we will leave that out. We'll look at it internally from the Myanmari point of view. It was the army which started expelling the Rohingya Muslims and humanitarian crisis and all that. But surprisingly, Aung San Suu Kyi sided with the army completely and went against everything else. To the extent that people said, why have you given the Nobel Prize to this lady? Right? So she's actually tainted herself in 2017. And what has come out is that she's not a great shakes. She's also in the power game, though she's 70 plus. She's a product of the Delhi University, but that doesn't seem to be affecting her. She's gone into the typical, Myanmarese culture of creating some chaos or the other. Right. In November last year, the elections were held where she won a landslide victory, and the army was virtually wiped out. Okay, which was not acceptable to the army, because the army has got a hand in everything in that country. If there's another country which like Pakistan, the Pakistan army owns the country. Same thing in Myanmar. There's another army with a country in its pocket. Okay. Now, 1st February, the army chief took over as a coup, and he's put Aung San Suu Kyi and her entire cabinet, everyone in behind bars and the house arrest. And he said he'll take over for 1 year period, and we'll see where it goes. After all, 2 months have passed since that. And there's some semblance of, I wouldn't say normalcy, some political steps being taken, but again, it's all nebulous. But then where do we stand? Let's look at it at the constituents of Myanmar from a different viewpoint. As far as the people are concerned, 600 plus civilians, it's not 600, it's actually 700 plus, as of today. That's what Washington Post confirmed to me in the latest article which I read today. 700 plus civilians, including children, are dead. Over 3,000 people are detained. All prominent members of NLD are in custody. The people are against Tatmadaw. Tatmadaw is the Myanmar army, completely against this thing. And the people are against China also. And all the Chinese-owned garment factories are burnt. And they feel that China is helping the Tatmadaw. Right. But then the people have tasted democracy, and democracy is like toothpaste. You can squeeze it out, you can't put it back in. So that's the situation as far as the people are concerned. And as indications are, there is a humanitarian crisis developing in Myanmar. And ethnic rebels in the north are active. And the latest is that they've been air effort has been used against these people by the army. So there is a situation in the north, and that neighbors China. Okay, as far as Tatmadaw is concerned, they have the gun, and they have taken Chinese help as per reports. But the fact is that the Myanmarese army are quite balanced with India. Right. If you remember, towards November, December, our foreign secretary and the chief of army staff had gone and met all these people and came back and said, "Look, things are okay." That was at a time just after that Eastern Ladakh thing. No, I wouldn't say November. I don't remember the date, but they did this trip to stabilize, or rather get some kind of a reassurance from Myanmar, and things were okay. So that is why our equations with them are okay. We've given them a submarine, we've given them some helicopters, we've given them some guns. And these guns I know because I sent them across. Right. But today the army is not popular with the people. Let's not make a mistake. They will remain in power, come what may. At the same time, Tatmadaw is wary of China due to support of ethnic rebels in the north. We also have to recognize that the army has held the country together one way or the other. I still remember when I was serving in the East, when we used to send across, communicate to the Myanmarese army, look, our rebels from our side are gone into your side, will you help? He says, look, how can we help you? We don't have the capability. If the Indian army doesn't have the capability to sort out rebels, how do you expect us to do it? That was the feeling. But then they've held the country together, granted to them. Now, as far as NLD and Aung San Suu Kyi, Rohingya crackdown, I've already spoken about. They have been cozying up to China, which is not very great for us. But they have the popular mandate. Democracy and human rights are actually weapons and instruments to gain power more than values. They don't have any. Let's face facts. They formed a unity government again, which Colonel Hariharan was mentioning. But how far this unity government will go is a question mark. And there are indications that it will, degenerate into a civil war. Whether it degenerates into a civil war or not, a humanitarian situation is developing there, with a lot of refugees going out. Now, when you look at the loosely controlled jungle regions, right, it's a sanctuary for all rebels, all ethnic minority groups. There's drug trafficking going on. And these jungle areas have a history of China backing communists and rebels. So there is a conflict between China and Myanmar on this issue. Of course, and this Mitsona Dam is not popular with people. I'll come back to that because you have to understand where Mitsona Dam is. To this thing, I'll come when we talk about China. What is the hard reality? The first bullet is important. The Tatmadaw is not the problem, but it is part of any solution. Aung San Suu Kyi or democracy is not the solution, but it is part of the problem. You can turn it around, it will remain the same. So they have to exist in this state throughout. And that is their history, and it will go forward. Let's not expect that it will change. Okay. Now, this is the second thing, reality. I'm talking of real politics. If the Tatmadaw is weakened or splits, Myanmar will descend into chaos like Iraq, Syria, or wherever, X, Y, Z. The UN Assistant General Secretary says it's heading Syria way. Now, restoration of democracy is a pipe dream. Let's not expect it. It will not happen. Because if democracy happens, the ethnic rebels will go take it somewhere else. So, to my way of understanding, stabilization is the key. In some form, if we can rewind the situation back with some power sharing agreement, that is where the whole story will lie. But whether that will happen or not is a different question. Now, the Tatmadaw is a highly privileged state within the state. It's a deep state, just like the Pakistani army, or even worse. The only difference between them is these people have internalized Myanmar. Pakistan, those fellows are externalizing and they're selling their country as a frontline state. They're making money out of it. These people are making money from within. Okay. Aung San Suu Kyi also bears responsibility for the current situation. Let's not wish it away. Right. Both Tatmadaw and Myanmar deeply distrust China. As I speak, you'll get a feeling that who's the enemy, who's the friend, and who's against whom. Everyone is against everyone. Everyone is everyone's friend. Everyone is everyone's enemy. That's how its situation is evolving there. Right. As far as the West is concerned, it intends to look and feel good rather than do good. Sanctions won't work. Sanctions didn't work against anyone, anywhere. Unless there are compelling reasons for sanctions to work. Burma is used to isolation. It will get isolated. People will die. That doesn't affect the West. All the West can do is do sanctions. Unfortunately, the West has not invested in Burma. That's a fact. There's nothing on ground there. China is coldly pragmatic. It will do anything to protect its interests and gain strategic advantage. We should not have a doubt about this. Okay, the Indo-Pacific partners should weigh approaches which can give China an advantage and act accordingly. That's why I showed the first slide. This Myanmar is very important in the Indo-Pacific construct, in the Quad, in containing China or XYZ. Apart from the fact that, we have to do good by Myanmar, that the larger issue has to be taken in. And that is where India comes in. Refugee crisis is on the hand. It's already started. And let's not fool ourselves. It's going to be a long drawn out crisis with no solution. Okay. A lot of countries have condemned the military takeover, but that's of no value. In the Armed Forces Day parade, the Russian deputy minister attended. And India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam sent military attaches. Rest boycotted. Now, all these people who I named have interests in Myanmar and are playing the cards both ways. US, UK, and European Union have only said sanctions and nothing else. That too on military officials. They've taken the side of the democracy. I mean, that is almost a reflex action against the military and for the democracy without weighing things really. The ASEAN is ambivalent and split. Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Brunei want to discuss the crisis. And they want immediate release of Aung San Suu Kyi and restoration of democracy. Cambodia, Thailand, Philippines, and Vietnam, they feel that this situation is an internal affair. Laos is on a wait and watch, and it will go with China, whatever China does. So the ASEAN is also totally not very clear as to what line it has to take. And there's going to be Asian meet, I think, any day now. And we'll see how it comes, but I don't think much will come out of it except the initial talk. Now, Russia is emerging as a prominent player here because they've always supported the Janta. They have very clearly said this is a purely domestic affair of a sovereign nation. Fundamentally, they want to have a pie in this Indo-Pacific through Myanmar. They want to increase military cooperation with Myanmar. A lot of 35% of Myanmar's arms are Russian. And like I said, they are seizing an opportunity. They are completely backing Myanmar. And historically, Myanmar and Russia ties have been cordial because the old generals use Russia as a counter to China. And why they use Russia? Because India was comfortable with Russia. All those connects are coming and rekindling themselves. Now, let's look at China, because this is tremendously important for us as C3S. They have blocked the UN Security Council statement condemning the coup. They have described it as an internal matter. They have said international community should stop aggravating conflict and complicating the situation. They are perceived as supporting Tatmadaw. What is the Chinese core interest? Reach Bay of Bengal at any cost through CMAC to get out of the Malacca dilemma. I don't think there's any other reason. Okay, this is the CMAC. Why have I shown you this? You look at the whole lot, it's coming through Kunming, right down. This is the place called Ruli, where it enters. This is the old Lido Road. Now, the old Lido Road joins at Mandalay, and one comes down up to Moreh and Imphal. So, at when the Japanese invaded Myanmar, the Kuomintang were part of the British army and were defending against the Japanese. Ultimately, when the Japanese pushed us till Mandalay, the Kuomintang withdrew this way, and the Indian army went this way. That's how it was. Just to put you in the right perspective. Okay, and all this, and now they are looking at Kaikapyu, a port at Kaikapyu, a deep water port at Kaikapyu. The moment this deep water port comes at Kaikapyu, 300 to 400 kilometers, if there's a road connectivity, gas line, rail connectivity, India is outflanked. And the complete, your Bay of Bengal and Indian Ocean strategy goes for a toss. And China's two ocean strategy of having an entry, direct entry into the Bay of Bengal and bypassing Malacca Strait is done. That's why I showed this map. Otherwise, if you look at it, this is Mitsune Dam on the Irrawaddy on the north. Now the thing is, it's a mega dam which was conceived and agreed, inked, everything. And then there were problems. One, the problem of the rebels, and one, all these people said, what will a dam here do to us? It will give a lot of electricity, but it will go to China. We don't need it, and it's going to spoil our ecology. And so it went into a whole problem. We have to understand, Mitsune Dam is not here; it is here. So it's in a very troublesome area, and that's why Tan Shui stopped this whole story. Now there is a border economic cooperation zones which have started, and the high-speed rail XYZ, and then of course a deep sea port and a thing. And even Xi Jinping went to Myanmar and started talking to them, and everything was hunky dory when Aung San Suu Kyi was in chair. But all projects, Chinese projects, are in slow down, reduce scale mode. In fact, most of them have not started. As it is, the current Janta, which we think military Janta and all, they are very wary. They have scaled down everything. They have not allowed the projects to proceed as per the original thing. It is Aung San Suu Kyi who wants this to enlarge back. Maybe she's getting bribed, right, and to stay in power. And like I said, Myanmaris are wary of China beyond a point. So it is a situation where China is not going to have a free run. Now, this has been compounded by COVID. Myanmar is rampant with COVID, no figures, nothing. And the border area of Myanmar has been sealed off by China. Why? Because the border towns of China are now getting COVID. It is, there's a big spurt, it doesn't come out anywhere. Every day in this China People's Daily, they say 17 people have got, 11 people have got, 5 people have got. But they don't report this. And a whole lot of people are being vaccinated. Mass vaccination is being carried out. They have a problem. They shut down. I don't think Chinese will enter Myanmar in a hurry. They are worried. I mean, they are the larger issue. Going into Myanmar is one part of the story. Getting COVID into China is another part of the story. If China gets into, if COVID gets into China the way it has got into our system, the communists will lose power. So they will not get in. Thanks to COVID, though COVID has got minor mercies also. Right. So this is where the thing of the China-Myanmar economic corridor. Right. What is our Indian interest? We have a historical connect. At least I have grown up reading John Masters, Road Past Mandalay and Defeat into Victory. Our Burma campaign and Indian military are intertwined. Kohima, Imphal, Mektila, Mandalay, Arakan campaign, Satwe, Chandich, all these. These are the places and these are the campaigns through which our doctrinal principles have evolved of jungle fighting, counterinsurgency, whole lot of things. Right? We have a very great connect. We also have a great connect with Chennai, incidentally. Burma Teak. The entry of Burma Teak into India was through Calcutta and Chennai. The old Sun Theatre near that flyover, Germany flyover, around that used to be the timber mark. And most of these people used to get Burma Teak from Rangoon and they had interest there. I still remember when I was a kid, went to one of those. My grandfather was a contractor. We went there to order for Burma for teak, and this one Nadar sitting there. He took details. He said, "Okay, we will get you in the next 3 weeks because we're going to get it from Burma." That was the connect, right? And you'll be surprised to know that a lot of people of Tamil people are still there in Burma, and many of them have migrated towards India to Manipur. If you go to the border town of More, it's a Tamil population. People talk in Tamil out there, and they're very comfortable. If you talk in Tamil, you'll get concession on smuggled goods. Okay, what are the Indian interests seriously? Northeast ethnicity, connectivity, third line of communication, trilateral highway, Chinese activity, and destabilization of Northeast, and the physical threat from the Leader Road. ASEAN connectivity, Sagar, BIMSTEC, Indo-Pacific, and all this. All these are at risk if Burma goes unstable. We'll see a few of them, and I'll make you understand the problem. Now, when you look at it, these areas are all borders with Burma. Okay, instability here will affect our problem, and we will face a refugee crisis. There's no doubt. And our northeast insurgents have bases in Myanmar. If you see the Naga limb, it spreads over into the Myanmar. That chap Kaflang was a Myanmarese Naga, and they wanted to take over half of Myanmar. So we have an issue. Whether it's Sagaing state, Kachin state, or the Karen state, we have issues. And that is why, and you also see Nagas, Mars. I mean, many of you wouldn't have heard this ethnic tribe called Mars. They are there. Mizos, Chins, they reside on both sides of the border. Especially Mizoram has got tremendous connectivity, the ethnic connectivity, right? And we have had an off-on relationship with Myanmar. Our recent relationship was good, like I said. They helped us quite a lot in the cross-border raid against NSC and IM in 2015-16, if you remember. Our military cooperation was on the up. On the other hand, a relationship with NLD was not great. I've told you about the COS and Secretary MEA's visit. In my opinion, we need to have a balance and real politics. Right. Now, just to give you an idea, this is the sea route. See, the connectivity to the northeast has got 3 links, 3 strands. One is the route through the Siliguri corridor. One is the direct route through the Bangladesh, and third is the sea route. And this is one of the shortest routes to northeast. And we had this Setwe port and the Kaladan multimodal port along the Kaladan river to go up with the land route and get into Mizoram, to open up Mizoram. Otherwise, going to Mizoram is going all around North Pole and getting in. That's why the cost of even a tin of milk or frozen whatever is about 5 to 6 times more. It's hell, right? And having served there, I know how things are, right? And this was in the final stages. This is might get destabilized. It's a problem for us. Now, the trilateral highway, this is the direct connectivity. This is through the Siliguri corridor. This trilateral highway was on the cards between India, Myanmar, and Thailand. Bangladesh wanted to join the trilateral highway so that we have a connect directly through Bangladesh and shorten this torturous route. Right? Because if you go through Bangladesh and you go through Agartala, you'll hit this faster. Right? So all this is there. All this is at stake for us. And the moment you put this trilateral highway, the effect of the CMAC will go down. And some part of it was coming when this thing went for a toss. In fact, there has been talk that this trilateral highway will be extended to Japan so that Japan gets a stake in this. And Japan has got some value in Myanmar for whatever reason. Right. India is in a state of strategic ambiguity. You urge for release of political prisoners. We support all attempts to resolve the current situation, including through the ASEAN. That's what we're talking. We condemn use of any violence. But we have deals with Tatmadaw. And we believe the rule of law should prevail. Right? We stand for restoration of democracy. Refugees are being dealt with as per law and humanitarian consideration. Initially, I think Manipur or Mizoram had issues, but that's been resolved. And now, We are like a cat on the wall. We don't know which side to jump. But like a cat on the wall, we have the capability of jumping whichever way we want. The cat on the wall is not always a bad position to be in. Right? We have to play hard politic and see what to do when. My view, this is where I put my view. So far, I've been giving largely facts. India's future has to be proactive. We need to keep China on the sidelines and secure Northeast. Because if China comes down the CMEC, they turn our flanks and try and put military pressure on the Arunachal, Nagaland and the Manipur border. Because there are adequate road connectivity through them. That's a problem. And this has been war game by us quite often. Right. Also, we have to recognize that India is in the best position to bring about reconciliation. We are liked by the people. We have okay equation with Tatmadaw, and we also have an okay equation with the democracy. And like I said, our cat on the wall gives us options. Okay, we can use ASEAN and Quad as the platform. We need to shift from strategic ambiguity to promoting all-round acceptability. We need to jockey accordingly, patiently, with purpose. Move at the right time. If you keep sitting on the sidelines, we'll keep sitting on the sidelines. This is a crisis, but like every crisis, it is an opportunity also. We need to be a little more bold in our foreign policy and everything to ensure that Myanmar is safe. Destable Myanmar is okay, but the Myanmar with China in it is the worst. In this destabilization, China will do anything to get into Myanmar. What's one? Secondly, a stable Myanmar helps develop Northeast. A stable Myanmar helps our look east, act east policy. So stability of Myanmar is very important. Stability of Myanmar is important for Quad. We as a nation, even a dog barks in Pakistan, all of us react and all of us have opinions. If you've seen in the past few minutes, which I've spoken, Myanmar is probably more critical than Pakistan today. We need to spend more thinking time on this. Right? With this, I have finished. I am prepared for any questions and any this thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, General.
Thank you, General Sam. That was actually, you stole the thunder.
No, sir, hardly.
Because your last slide was the essence. Last time during the Rohingya crisis, actually, China stole the thunder because China got into the act. When the West was trying to push for the Rohingyas, China said they would try to mediate.
Correct.
And they got it. Nothing much happened. That's a different issue. So I think India should play a proactive role. There is no two way about it. You very rightly said, now we have Bangladesh route also available. So the logical progression is we should be able to strategically increase our influence in Myanmar. One thing in Myanmar is actually all invasions have been river-based historically.
Correct. Yes, sir.
The Westerners, they tried to cut through the mountain ranges. The three rivers dominate. Actually, the Napita was shifted to as a new capital because they feared the marine invasion. That through the river Yangon will be taken over. So it is actually, people have been asking about Quad. Forget about Quad. It is, we should take the initiative.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And we can, otherwise it will get delayed because within the Quad, different people have different opinions on what they should do. Point number 2, you said sanctions are ineffective. They will affect the poorest.
Yes.
That's all will happen. And point number 3, I would like to highlight is the Actually, Indonesia is has taken the initiative in
Mediation,
on
sir.
the 24th conference. It's being held for some sort of ASEAN initiative. India should actually muster Indonesia also, because Indonesia and Malaysia, they don't want to face the brunt of these refugees coming. Earlier with the
Yeah,
Rohingya, they had a major problem.
I
And
agree with
Thailand,
you.
that is why Thailand is very, very careful. It is not for, Thailand has got its own internal problems. So it does not want to aggravate it by having this Karenni people and Shams moving into Thailand. Already it has got a diaspora,
Yes, sir.
Burmese diaspora inside, more than 200,000. So actually that we should do. How we should do is the question. And you very rightly said, it is not going to be resolved quickly. So stabilization, number one, as you said, how to stabilize the situation. That would involve releasing the prisoners, sitting across the table and discussing the situation. The basic problem is the 2008 constitution is heavily loaded in favor of the army. Army has got one-fourth members inside the parliament. Army nominates. So the basic reason is that is why he didn't agree. The General Lying didn't agree for this election results, because the army lost its proxy,
25, that
civilian.
25% they lost.
25% is not enough, because
For
they
them.
can amend the constitution now, and they lift the army. Army is scared of losing its position of power, so it will require some soft. So I throw it open to the August House. There are many people with good, rich experience in the region and exposure, and also you. And another thing is, though Myanmar is a Bay Bengal power, that is the for the importance for Indo-Pacific. It has got very few seaports. That is a problem of Myanmar because of silting up the river. So the Kyakpu is one of those which Chinese are developing. The port has not come into action. It is supposed to have come into action.
They've not started also, sir.
It has. There is a lot of local hitch because the money has not been transferred. There is a lot of corruption, and the Mru people who are not Burmese, they are objecting to the gas pipelines because of environmental issue. So it has not been a smooth ride for the Chinese. So, and we are developing that Sitwe. It is also
Kaladam.
a river port, but there is sufficient. It has been dredged now. It can take ships across. I suppose I don't know the tonnage. We had a discussion also on this project earlier in C3S.
Sir.
We had the
Yeah.
joint
Yeah,
secretary
I've not
discussing.
gone into the micro things because
No,
I thought
no.
let me give the
What I'm
macros.
saying is your macros are absolutely fine, and the issue is, I see the Chinese hold the card that because there the tribes across the border in the north, they are akin to the Chinese ethnically. So they hold the trigger. Earlier also, communist insurgency also was used by the Chinese Communist Party to trigger a rebellion. So this is a key thing. But China, as you said, it has got investments. It would like to protect the investments. Japan has got investments. South Korea has investments. Thailand is invested in heavily in the communication, in internet communication and all. So these countries also should be involved. I don't know how China can be involved, but this is one carrot that can tempt China also to play down as a spoiler, its role as spoiler. So I throw it open to the house for coming up. Bala, any?
Yes, yes, Colonel. Uh, as we move to the Q&A session, the first question is by Komodo Vasan. He has asked, we are in a typical catch-22 situation. The last time India distanced, China moved in and dug its heels, and it took decades for some normalization and engagement. Today, the population are against China. What are the options for India, knowing that all those are really tough by all yardsticks?
I think we'll have to watch and wait because the situation is too nebulous for us to throw our hat in completely. We have to throw our hat in and say, look, we'll help everyone. That's how we should approach the whole problem. And I suppose we are doing it without making too much of a noise, right? Because, like I said, the people trust Indians. The the army is okay with India, Tatmadaw, right? And the democracy, to some extent, we don't know exactly. I'm not too very sure whether we have complete control. I won't say control. We have good links with the democracy, but we obviously have. One thing interesting, which is heartening, is the Kaladan multimodal port, which Colonel Hariharan was talking of, the dredging and all that. For a long time, it got stuck. In the recent past, it made a lot of progress. Before this event happened, it was almost complete. In fact, the problem of opening it is not of the Myanmar side. It is more our problem because those jungles there are full of insurgents, and if you know Northeast, any road, anything which comes up, any development which comes up, the insurgents comes there like flies to honey, right? They gather because it represents money. So it has been more of our problem, but then we were almost getting over it. So to that extent, our relations as Myanmar slid into this instability were okay all round, and we have to leverage it. I mean, I don't see any particular prescription which I can give. Yeah, international thing we can go. We have to talk. If 24th we are talking, there should be some representation in Asia. In any case, we have a status there, so we'll have our part. We have to influence the court, and we can tell the court, take a walk about everything else. We're going to take the lead because it's in Quad's interest this happens. It's in Japanese interest this happens. India and Japan have tremendous. We have a strategic partnership. We have to operationalize it for Myanmar. So we have to go all stops out. I mean, there's no other way. And where we get an opportunity, we should get in. When I say opportunity, an opportunity to reconcile the situation and stabilize the situation. We cannot wish the army away. We cannot wish democracy away. Have to come into some form. Like I said, you have to go back to a rewind. That's my opinion, sir.
Thank you, General. You have partially answered my second question. I was about to ask, since you have already mentioned in your presentation, Japan also has a say in Myanmar. Both India and Japan are actually part of the quadrilateral grouping. So how can we leverage grouping so as to outflank China? And as a supplementary to that question, and also use Quad to leverage challenges that Myanmar faces from China.
Yeah, one of the things which we should also understand, which Colonel Hariharan again rightly pointed out, let's not wish China away from here. They have huge investments. Their businesses are there. They've put some money into this whole story. There is some ethnic similarity between Chinese. There are a lot of Chinese living in Burma, like Burmese living in Yunnan. So there is like we have connectivity, ethnic connectivity with the Northeast. They also have. So you can't wish China away. You can't say that, shut China out. We can marginalize China, or rather reduce its effect. We can slow down the China-Myanmar economic corridor. That, any case, has happened. I don't think the CIMAC will ever get back to that thing in the next 1 decade, 2 decades. After a decade, we'll see what happens. Because as it is, it was slowed down and very slow progress was being made despite Xi Jinping's visit. Right? So, like I said, the mega thing is we have the opportunity. We need to unlock every door to see where light comes in. or rather, which door gives you the best payoff. That's my view.
Thank you, General.
Actually, Bala, one moment. Actually, there are 3 NLD parliament members sitting in Mizoram.
Must be.
And
The army wants to get hold of them.
they want to get them back. There are over 100 people already there, and Mizoram chief minister also doesn't want them to be expelled because they are chins.
Chins, yes.
You can cross over.
Yeah. If you see cookies, chins, they are the same ethnic thing. And you can walk across, their marriages take place, people go across.
Yeah, they intermarry also.
The border has got no sanctity in that area.
Yeah.
And
so we have enough leverage to actually influence.
Yes.
And very rightly, let us hold Chinese at bay, and so that let us not lose the initiative. That's my point.
Yeah. Next question.
Thank you, Colonel. Next question is by one of our intern, Mr. Avinash Kumar. He has asked, despite criticism over a military coup in Myanmar, India has attended the military parade in Apida. Why India? Is it that India is not having a clear stance? And also, how do you see the future of BIMSTEC and DCIM?
Look, the fact that India shouldn't have equation with the military junta and all is very nice. It's good talk. It's human rights, all that is very nice to talk. But real politics, we must back both horses. We must not back both horses. We should get both horses to come together, because, like I showed you the history of Myanmar, we cannot wish both of them away. They will be there in every power structure. And the Myanmar army is fully involved in the state, and they own the state, right? And this is the area of drug smuggling. This is the area of ruby smuggling. This is the area of everything is smuggled there. If you go to More and you get a sense, everything has a price, and you get everything there, right? So everything is negotiable in those belts, and there's no harm. A lady could be selling bendi, and next to that she'll open another basket and give you a 0.45 colt also, and that's also negotiable as good as a bendi. And actually, if you go there and do it, you'll understand what I'm talking. So that place is very nebulous. The Northeast, if you served in the Northeast and look back how it was, this place is a little worse than that. So that's how it is. There's no morality. The only morality is getting stability back and the people not dying. Ultimately, if you can help the people of Myanmar, it will be great. Yeah.
Thank you, General. Commodore Vasan has asked, on the point of BIMSTEC, it has not taken off as we expected. How can we make BIMSTEC to be effective more so with the military takeover now?
See, the BIMSTEC and all wasn't taking on because Bangladesh itself, we had a problem. Now we've gone and resolved Bangladesh. When we have resolved Bangladesh, Myanmar has gone into a problem. So unless Myanmar and Bangladesh come into the equation and have some degree of stability, BIMSTEC will not go on. So I think this will hang. But we cannot give up. We cannot, like I said, Myanmar is critical for Lukis, Quad, stability in Northeast. All these issues come back and will haunt us if we do the wrong thing in Myanmar, or we don't do the right thing in Myanmar. One thing is don't do anything. If you don't do anything and that power vacuum is filled by China or anyone else, we have a problem. And we shouldn't also be very happy of giving Russians a space there. The Russians of today are not the Russians of yesterday. They are already showing different colors with Pakistan. So we have to be careful of the Russian influence. Let's not forget it. Russia today has got the maximum influence in Myanmar, right? So we have to push everyone out. And if we have gone into Quad, we have to take Quad in. The Quad, if you have to read, I mean, I would suggest all of us who are reading China and thinking of China, please read Robert Kaplan's Two Ocean Strategy. It's a small essay, about 5 to 10 pages. It's a fantastic thing. You'll get to know why Myanmar and that Kaikafu are important in the two ocean strategy. Yeah. Next.
Thank you, General. The last question is by Ms. Padma. She has asked, you have mentioned that Myanmar has a border with China, which has been closed due to the pandemic. Can China vaccine diplomacy play a key role or be a key factor to influence?
Oh, yeah. Well, theoretically, yes, but practically, that's not what's happening because they are not they're not anyway interested in vaccinating anyone except their own. They're very scared. And we also have to realize that the Chinese vaccines are not that effective. I mean, that's proven now. And that is proven by two things which we were discussing before this event started. One, in the UAV, people are getting the third dose selectively because if the immune response is not good, people are getting the third dose. Right. And the Chinese head of the vaccine program, right, equivalent to the CDC of USA, like someone like Robert Fauci, he made a statement that our vaccines are not that good. It went viral on Chinese Twitter, Weibo, and 3 days later that thing was taken off. I don't know where that guy is right today. So there's a problem. There's also an issue which has come up, which I have analyzed elsewhere. The Chinese are probably not carrying out mass vaccination of Chinese, because they're not confident of their vaccine. If that goes bad, they'll have problems. So I don't think this vaccine diplomacy will pay well in Myanmar. In any case, China doesn't play vaccine diplomacy with people. It always does vaccine diplomacy with the government, because for it people have got very little value. Right.
Padma, one aspect I want to stress: there is no government. The government servants have joined the movement.
The movement, yeah.
Movement for democracy.
So there is absolutely no chaos.
The health workers have been warned now by government. They have been arrested also. So it is not, the COVID vaccination program is not taking place as it should. The country is in chaos. So this must be the last thing in public mind who are trying to survive.
I'll put it this way. Maybe the issue is, can you do the vaccine diplomacy on the border and all that? Maybe that, from that point of view, it's a valid question. Otherwise, the problem is there's a humanitarian crisis. People will run out of food shortly. If people run out of electricity and the other issues which are coming, civil services are disrupted. But the fact is relevant that as far as the border is concerned, but I don't think it will happen.
Thank you very much, General. Thank you very much, General. Before I hand it over to the moderator, we have two distinguished delegates with us, Shri Pratap Heblikar and Shri Krishnan Verma, both of whom have dealt considerably with this region. May I request a quick comments before I hand it over to the moderator, starting from Shri Pratap Heblikar ji? Sir, you're there? Pratap, sir?
No, he's not there.
Okay, may I request Shri Krishnan Verma, sir, who is here with us today for his quick comments?
Yeah, thank you very much, Bala, and thank you, General, for a wonderful presentation. I think it was very detailed, very informative for all people like me, especially who might pretend to know Myanmar and this region well. I think it was really a very, very thought-provoking piece. And I think the preface that was made by Colonel Hariharan and the remarks that were made by Commodore Vasan actually put that entire problem in perspective when you're talking about perspective on Myanmar. So it sort of fits in. I just have one question, rather a concern and a question that flows from that concern. We did talk about Russia and the influence of Russia in the region. Do you see whether the Russians are doing this as an initiative of their own to rekindle a relationship which was rather dormant for some time, based on an economic and trade kind of a potential? Are they looking at a coordination with the Chinese in some way, where the Chinese influence, because of the antipathy that the people might have against it, goes into a bit of a lower profile and the Russians dominate and they work in concert with the idea of not only somehow bringing in a new dimension, but also actually counter a Quad in the region and find another route into the Indo-Pacific? and the efficacy of this. The Russians have also played a little bit of a game in Bangladesh. They were there. They have been quite involved. So, are they making an entry into this BIMSTEC region? And the question, the short point that I wanted to make was: is this part of an individual initiative, as Putin is showing, or is it part and complete concert with Chinese interests in this region? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the question. That's a very interesting question and a relevant question, which we have to factor in all our moves. First and foremost, 35 to 40% of Myanmar's the Tatmadaw in equipment is Russian. Heavy equipment is Russian. So there is a huge economic angle for Russia, right? And so they will not let it go. And come what may, they will back the Tatmadaw. That's the bottom line. Even if they don't back the Tatmadaw, even if a democracy comes in, the army still has to exist because of the natural resources. It doesn't matter which government comes in. It needs an army. The nation needs an army. And if the nation needs an army and 35 to 40% of your armed forces are Russian origin, Russia will not let go. So there's an economic angle to it. And you know how cash-strapped Russia is. So they will not, that will override everything else. The second thing is influence. If they have the best influence today with this thing, and they've come out upfront because the deputy minister, where foreign minister came and took part in the parade, and they said, "I'll back you to the hilt," and they'll back anyone to the hilt. Russia, as you know, for the past say 2-3 decades, was getting marginalized. It made a re-entry in Syria and to come back into the scene. Similarly, it's making a re-entry into this region because otherwise it has got no locus standi in the Asia Pacific or the Indo-Pacific region. It doesn't have a great equation. I mean, I will not say great equation. It doesn't have a great thing with the ASEAN or the ASEAN plus or all of the countries of this region. If you see, it has the best connectivity with or the best equation of Russia is with Myanmar. It had an equation with India, which has lost or it is waning. So to make an entry and make itself a nuisance and make itself a power play everywhere, it has to get into Myanmar. Next, while it seemingly we might think that Russia is trying to back China, but my own view is Russia will get hold of Myanmar, right, to help China and become the bigger partner, enabler, so that Russia can play better cards with China ultimately. Today, in the construct which is coming up, Pakistan, China, Russia, I'm taking you off on a tangent, but that has a bearing here. China is the major partner and Russia is the junior partner, and Pakistan probably is the junior most partner in this triangle. And in this emerging relationship, so Russia, by gaining influence in Myanmar, would like to equalize that relationship. So I think Russia is playing a totally independent game. And it will also use this to leverage its ties back with us. It will, at some point of time, this fellow, that external affairs minister of his who came here, I'm sure has discussed all this and gone. It is not a simple thing that Afghanistan, and it has started playing its role in Afghanistan. It has started to, after all, Afghanistan is its underbelly. It remains Russia's underbelly, like Ukraine. I'm taking you away, but everything has got a connect. Russia has to re-establish itself if it wants to get back to being a power. And Russia has never given up its superpower dreams. So I think we'll have to contend with this and play it accordingly. And we need to play both sides with Russia, like we've been doing. So maybe at times we might have to go with Russia and Russia's influence in this area to stabilize that. I mean, apart from using Quad and ASEAN and all, we also should not forget to use Russia to stabilize Myanmar to suit our interests. I mean, this is a place where, there's a hanky, there are 6 players running around it. Who picks the hanky is the winner. And who's going to be fast on the draw to hoodwink the others is going to be the winner in the real politics. I think that's a very interesting question, sir. Thanks a lot.
So thank you, General. If I'm permitted, can I just ask a very quick
You're
follow-up,
not heard.
a very short one? So, do you think, General, did
Please,
we
sir.
miss? We had a time of a great relationship with Myanmar in the last almost a decade now, a very good relationship, and we were building on many resources, mostly economic, and we were also trying to checkmate China. Do you think we missed an opportunity to strengthen relations with the Tatmadaw in terms of servicing Soviet equipment, weapons, and keeping that force going? Or were we quite successful in doing that? I know there were some attempts at coordination and helping each other in this, but I don't see much coming out of that. Have I missed something?
I think we did, sir. We missed the decade. We missed the decade. Look, that's our internal politics. I mean, whatever our external politics, other factor of our internal politics. If I have to take you back, way back in 2005 when I was a brigade commander there, I was one day told hand over 6 guns to Myanmar. So 6 guns of mine, we 105 guns. I sent one to IC. I said just hand over and came. They came, took over. We trained them also and gave it. Right. I thought that was a fantastic thing then, because given the situation at that point of time, we were having a lot of problems in Manipur. There's a PLA in Manipur, for those of you who don't know. It's also called the People's Liberation Army, but it's all Manipur. And there were areas of Manipur at that point of time which were deemed liberated by the PLA, where the government or own government's red didn't run. That was the time when I was commanding the brigade there, and we used to have. We've actually taken real tactical operations there, right? But I'll not go there, right? So we had problems at that point of time. We had good equations with the Tatmadaw, and that was also the time when Aung San Suu Kyi was still in the house arrest, and Thein Sein was in the saddle, and the Kaladan multimodal port was coming up. I'm talking of now 15, 16 years back. From then to now, the relations have been going up. 15 years of relations going up. Now, in between, what happened? Our own story, UPA to NDA. This switch, we didn't continue with our external way of doing things. Though Prime Minister Modi did say of look east and all that, we somehow didn't give that kind of importance to Myanmar. And if you look at the first term of the NDA, we said you look east, but we didn't act east the way we should have. If we had invested more in our neighbors, I will say, sir, it is not only Myanmar. We didn't invest in Bangladesh also. We didn't invest in Nepal also. I mean, look at Nepal. We shouldn't have been in the position we are after having helped them out for that, earthquake which came. Right at the end of the earthquake, they told us to get out. So we messed up our environment quite a bit. If you look at Sri Lanka, it's the same. It is now in the second tenure of this government that we have now started mending our fences. So we really lost an opportunity. In fact, I would say we lost a huge opportunity on our neighborhood first and look east policies. That's my view. But then there's no point looking back. That's the reality. We have to look ahead.
Thank you, General.
Thank you, General.
One small point, Mr. Verma. You had mentioned about Russian influence. You see,
Yes.
the Tatmadaw has got a section which doesn't like Chinese, because Chinese have been supplying arms to the even shoulder-fired missile they had supplied to the insurgents. So they had India was the one which has supplied arms, and Russians have been the traditional suppliers on cash payment. They have been buying, and most of the countries had boycotted supplies. So, as General brought out, there is a big attraction of trade deal for Russia in Myanmar. We should not miss out that aspect. Beyond all this strategic thing, it's a Russian arms trade has fallen it is under a lot of pressure, competition from China, and of course, India is the biggest plant. It has come down. That's a point I want to make. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you, Colonel Hariharan. That's why I raised that question about that. Did we miss an opportunity? Because we had a lot of Soviet arms
Yes,
here,
yes, sir.
and people have been asking for help and support for servicing, replenishment, spares. We probably didn't cash in on this, and that's the point I was trying to make. We've missed the boat there, but let's hope we catch up somewhere else now.
Thank you, sir. Before we move to Air Marshal Vardhaman, sir, may I request quick comments from Shri Pratap Hiblika, sir?
Firstly, thank you, Bala, for your patience. General Shankar, thank you for your excellent presentation, and to Colonel Hariharan for the interventions he has made or the introductions that he's brought to the subject. Just some 3 or 4 points that I would like to make, looking at the major issues. The ASEAN meets day after tomorrow. The senior general from Myanmar is traveling to meet his ASEAN counterparts. China has said that it will support any ASEAN effort to bring about a change in the situation in Myanmar, which is good news, because China has, apart from its statements on day one of the coup, what happened in the Security Council, has come around to the fact that it needs to ensure that things do not go from bad to worse in Myanmar. If it does happen, then the Chinese interests in Myanmar will be postponed to a future date. So we'll have to wait till the 24th to see what has happened or what's going to happen. Foreign Minister Shankar has spoken to his American counterpart day before yesterday, and I believe that Myanmar was discussed in detail, and the Americans are also expected to support ASEAN in any effort that it brings forth to remedy the situation in Myanmar, and India is supportive of this particular aspect. The second point, which was spoken about the Russians. When I was posted in Myanmar, I did ask my Russian colleagues, so what makes Myanmar an important station for them? This was in 1996, and I was told that Russia existed in a diplomatic relations with Myanmar to keep an eye on what the Chinese were doing. Thirdly, the presence of the Russian Deputy Defense Minister at the Armed Forces Day Parade on March 27th. I don't read much into it, because subsequently, 2 days later, the Kremlin issued a statement. So yes, we expressed military-to-military relationship with the Burmese army in Tamil, but we do not condone the killing of civilians. We want people to return to normalcy as soon as possible. I think coming from the Russians, few days after the Armed Forces Parade, it was very rich in content. The third thing is, what is the role of the military today, and what is the role of the pro-democracy elements remains to be seen. There is a constant refrain from the military that they are here to keep the country together. They have, utilized this refrain for many, many years. People are tired, and this time around, it has been very clearly shown that the military can remain where it is, but people want democracy. In all the three elections that have taken place in 1990, 2010, and 2015, and again in 2020, 80% of the military have voted in favor of democracy. So it is just the fear of the leadership that keeps the rank and file in place. As far as Aung San Suu Kyi is concerned, she's made several tactical mistakes in dealing with the army. Now they are coming around to the fact that they need to remedy this. And I think there have been discussions with the Japanese as to how we can establish a bridgehead to bring about certain. There is going to be no reconciliation. There's going to be no rapprochement with the military. But how to ensure that things don't go out of hand? Because certainly Myanmar cannot afford a civil war. And China does not want that situation to come about, because it will create bigger problems for it. As far as India is concerned, I think after having been in the boondocks for 20 years, 1990 to 2010, when we were on the opposite side of the military for good reasons. I was there in 1996. I've seen the way diplomacy was conducted. So there was a different ball game altogether. But from 2010 onwards till 2020, I think India made up for the last time. There are two factors one must understand, that the Indian Army, the Indian Navy and the Indian Air Force have excellent relations with the military. I can't put it anything below that. The Burmese Army has a tremendous respect for the Indian Army as a professional organization. Today, given a chance, if you open up your military training institutions to Burmese military, 80% of them will prefer to come.
Oh yeah, there'll be a great flood, sir. I agree with you.
They will not go to
Anywhere
Pakistan, or
else.
they will not go to China,
Yeah.
or even to Thailand. India is what they want. And after all, what is the Burmese army? Traditionally a Sanders-based army. They believe in tradition. For example, even Navin was commissioned into the 4th Battalion of the Burma Rifles, which is a part of the British Indian Army. So he still had a lot of respect for the Indian Army as such. So I think the Indian Army has been India's major, element of influence in that country. Then we have several other stakeholders which create a relationship between the two countries. I think India has a lot to gain. India has gained, and I think India has much more to gain if it gets back into place. Whatever happens in the Northeast today, I think 15 years ago I would have understood that India required Myanmar's help in bringing our insurgents to the heel. But I think today the situation is much different. We can manage on our own. Sheikh Hasina did this for us in Bangladesh in 2001 onwards, and she dismantled the entire Indian insurgent movement in Bangladesh. It collapsed. So I think to say that India requires Myanmar's help in controlling our insurgency, I think we need to look at our own or counter-insurgency policies. Last, but not the least, we will never be able to compete with the Chinese, Myanmar or in Sri Lanka. We will need to create our own synergies. And for that, the government of India is not the only agency that can do it. There are many others that are part of the corporate sector needs to come in a big way. For example, in one of my articles I wrote, what problems Adani has in Sri Lanka today is causing the Chinese a lot of discomfort, because you have a huge Indian construction company which is sitting in Sri Lanka doing business. Chinese are trying to fuel this anti-India, anti-Adani movement. Same thing, Adani and Ambani are into Myanmar in a big way. But unfortunately, they are doing business with government-owned entities or anybody else. I think we have a long way to go. We have been constantly talking about the transit route which China was trying to create. And I think it's not going to be an easy way for it. The general showed us the alignment of the thing. One alignment lands up in Rangoon, the other alignment goes down to Chokpio. I think we have a certain amount of leverages we need to understand. And I think today, what I feel is if you have a leadership of the Indian Army like you have in the case of the current Army Chief, who was a defense advisor in Myanmar, he was the Eastern Army Commander, and he understands what's happening. I think there are people today in the strategic community understand Myanmar much more than what we do, and I think even the corporate entities are likely to have a bigger role. I think what happens in Myanmar in the next couple of months remains to be, anybody's guess. But I think the military is now painting itself into a corner. It's going to be very difficult for it to, come to the discussion table. It has to come to a place of strength from which it can dictate terms. Till that, it's not going to happen. The military will continue to call the cards. So that's what my take is, and I think generally, having served there, I have relationship with Myanmar since 1880, when my forebears we're civil servants in that country, so there's a lot of familial, sentimental, and emotional attachment. But none of these cloud the assessment that we make on the subject. I served there. I served in Mizoram. I served during in Shillong, so I have I think, a good understanding of the situation. So that's what I take. Thank you for the opportunity. I think I have been able to bring some perspective, added perspective to what the general says. I think I'm waiting for his evening shot, and I can one for tomorrow morning. Thank you very much, Bala, for the opportunity. And
thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Before I hand it over to Ms. Padma, can I request Air Marshal Vadhaman, sir, for his quick comments, please?
Yeah, thanks, Shankar.
Welcome, sir.
For me, it's an eye-opener. My God, it was an extremely informative presentation. When I, having served almost a quarter of my service career in the Northeast, there is much you learn. And the first thing you learn is get your own house in order. And the lack of development, the lack of growth in the Northeast is pitiable when you compare to our mainland. And we have seen it you can take any Manipur to Tripura to any of the Nagaland and Mizoram. You see, if we don't get our own house in order and the economy doesn't grow up, it doesn't influence the neighbor. So I think while we keep, juxtaposing what all this can be do with, but there are many things which is well within the nation's control. When I was commanding the East, the Look East policy came into being. And that time the Prime Minister was Manmohan Singh. And the Look East policy was basically on military development. That means to develop the roads and to develop infrastructure, all military infrastructure to counter China. The talk on the Northeast Road right up to Thailand was only a mere talk, and nothing really happened on ground. So first and foremost is if we can develop the Northeast into a powerhouse, which is there is plenty of potential there. You'll find the influence into Myanmar and the neighboring countries far, far, far better. And you'll find that the road also, the sea lane you talked about and into through Myanmar into the Northeast, all this will flourish. Let's get our own house in order. That's what I feel.
Thank you, sir. I think it's a very valid point. A very, very valid point.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Air Marshal Vadhaman, sir. May I now request our intern, Ms. Padma, to present the vote of thanks, please?
Yes. Thank you, sir. Good evening, all. I thank C3S for giving me the opportunity to present this vote of thanks. We sincerely thank Lieutenant General P.R. Shankar, former Director General of Artillery, retired and a distinguished member of C3S, for his valuable time, giving us a holistic view of Myanmar and responding to all our questions. I also take this opportunity to thank the Director of C3S, Commodore R.S. Vasan, Indian Navy, retired, for his presence here today despite his life disposition. Our sincere thanks goes to Colonel Hariharan for moderating the discussion. Thank you very much, sir. We express our gratitude to all our officers, veterans present here today. I extend my thanks to my colleagues, Ms. Nisha and Mr. Balasubramanian, for their support. And I would like to conclude with a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt. It isn't enough to talk about peace, one must believe in it. And it isn't enough to believe in it, one must work at it. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
And as a gentle reminder, tomorrow we are having a book conversation with Mr. Dexter Roberts on his book, The Myth of Chinese Capitalism. I request all to take your time out to be with us for tomorrow, which will be moderated by Shri M.R. Shivaraman, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much for your participation to all distinguished delegates today. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Jai Hind.